Teach us, what's that skill when someone's selling, but they're not really selling? You don't feel like you're kind of being sold to.
There's a lot of bad blood, bad vibes out there about sales. Where I think we go wrong is that we're pushing a product. Our definition of sales is very simple. It is helping people make progress in their lives, which means I'm listening very carefully to you, and always at a moment's notice, we will pivot to the exit and say, Ryan, we're not the right fit for you. Let us get someone who is.
Tell me a story about your biggest objection and the process you use to get beyond it.
Oh boy. So
well, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron and Growth Podcast. I am your co-host, Bennie Fowler, along with my other co-host, Ryan Harris. And today we are here with a very special guest, Craig Wortman, a very good friend of mine, a business partner of mine, a professor at Northwestern, a former professor at the University of Chicago, Booth, the builder of the Google Sales School, an incredible entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, one of the most incredible people that I've ever been around, Craig Wortman. Craig, welcome to the show, my friend.
Wow. Can we end it here? That's enough. That's perfect. Let's just end it right there.
No, man. No, this is something that Ryan and I have been super excited about. I mean, Craig, you and I have gotten a chance to know each other probably over the last 6 months, and we've had incredible conversations. And now a student of yours, but also a business partner of yours, just with everything that you've done at Sales Engine. So would love to dive in terms of just who you are. Would love to start with your story of how you built Sales Engine, your entrepreneurial journey. But let's start just wherever you want to start, and let's go from there.
Sure. Well, Ryan and Bennie, it's a pleasure to be here. And I've got to say right off the bat, Bennie, as I've gotten to know you over time, I've learned a heck of a lot, and I'm still learning from you. So thanks. And thanks to you both, Absolutely. You too, Ryan, for this opportunity to chat. I'll make a long story really short. I'm a 3-time entrepreneur. So I went to business school at Kellogg, where I now teach, which is just kind of fun and random. And I got inspired to become an entrepreneur. And it's funny, you two, because I took a very dangerous assumption into my first venture. I was an IBM salesperson. And so I took this somewhat egocentric notion into my first business that, hey, at least I know one thing, I know how to sell. And it turns out I was entirely wrong. It was a disaster of my own making. I own every piece of that disaster. So I went to a second business. I was very lucky after a disaster to get hired as a turnaround CEO. And I got so interested in the process of turning around this company, which turned out that what they needed was a sales engine. I love thinking about how to build a revenue engine, what are the people, process, and tools involved, and I just never get tired of it.
And you've done that successfully, and you've done that working now with hundreds of companies. I would love to know, what does it look like to start an engagement when you're talking about building a sales engine?
Where we start, when we walk into Google or a medium-sized company or a tiny little company, what we're looking at first and foremost is what we call the knowledge, skill, and discipline of the people. We start there, and we actually think, and this is, again, going to sound very strange to you and your audience, we believe that's the least important thing. It doesn't mean be dumb. Of course, we need to be smart, knowledgeable business people. Of course we do. But that's the price of entry. Then the question becomes, how skilled are you and how disciplined are you? Everyone can draw really powerful insights into, okay, how did you develop your skill? Not just the knowledge of the game or the knowledge of business. How did you develop your skill? What is skill? What are the disciplines? I'll stop there, but that's what we look for. And then we build systems and processes and tools around that to codify the knowledge, skill, and discipline of the thing.
I love that you bring up skill. Teach us, what's that skill when someone's selling, but they're not really selling? You don't feel like you're kind of being sold to. What is that skill called, and how do people develop it?
Oh my gosh, I love this question, Ryan. So again, this is something you know a lot about. You speak on mindset. Mindset is both a skill and a discipline. So if we go back to Carol Dweck, one of my favorites, Dr. Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset, one of my heroes, She says very distinctly in that book and in her research, mindset is a choice. We believe at Sales Engine, discipline is a choice. You either got up this morning and worked out or you didn't. It's a choice. You know how to work out. You have the skills of working out. The question is, did you do it or not? Did you eat healthy today or not? It's a discipline. The skill and the discipline is choosing the mindset by which you enter a sales situation. And now to give you a better answer to your question, I think the first thing we say to clients when we talk with them about Sales Engine and they may have heard about us or they're interested or we're prospecting new opportunities is we say, Ryan, the first thing to understand about us is our definition of sales. Our definition of sales is very simple. It is helping people make progress in their lives, which means I'm listening very carefully to you. And if I hear something that you say that's not a fit for me, I have to be the first one to say that. Ryan, that's interesting. I'm starting to understand that we may not be a good fit for you, but I know a gentleman, Bennie Fowler, who would be a better fit for you. May I make an introduction? Because I'm here to help you make progress. It doesn't have to be with me.
Where do most people get it wrong? Do you think they want that tangible transaction? Is that where sales can go bad? Where do people miss that?
I know salespeople are well-intended. Are there bad apples? Of course there are. There's bad apples in any bunch. Where I think we go wrong, and thus we develop this cultural allergy to the word sales, is that we're pushing a product. I'm going to sell no matter what you want. Ryan, you need this cup of coffee. You need this laptop. You need this consulting service. I stopped listening to you an hour ago because I know you must buy this from me. That's all push and no pull. We'd rather pull. And it doesn't mean we don't push, because if we're convinced that you do need us, we will push. We'll put our money on the line. Because again, we've been listening very, very carefully to you and trying to understand. And always at a moment's notice, we will pivot to the exit and say, Ryan, we're not the right fit for you. Let us get someone who is.
Can you talk about where that concept of practice came from in terms of putting it on your calendar to practice your sales skills?
We've talked about build high performance teams, build a high performance culture. And as athletes, that is baked into the system. Of course you have to. Of course you have to practice 6 days a week to get to game day, right? I know I should practice my storytelling before I walk into a CEO's office and practice how to have difficult conversations and practice how to handle objections. I know intellectually I should do that, but we don't build it into our cultures. We feel it is our mission to bring practice into business cultures, and specifically where our bread is buttered, sales cultures. So, as you alluded to, what does that mean? Quite literally true from this week. I acquired a new story. I'm a storyteller. You both know that. I acquire stories all the time. What happens when I acquire a story on Monday and I tell it on Tuesday? I stink at it. I'm a professional storyteller, but I don't know that story. I just learned it yesterday. I read it in a book. And so what I do is I get a colleague, I get a coach who happens to be a great storyteller. We go in a private room. I tell the story over and over. And I walk out on Tuesday from that coaching session. I walk into a CEO's office on Wednesday. I crush that story. And it's not because I'm smart. It's because I'm skilled and disciplined. I've practiced that move over and over.
What does it look like to craft the proper story? Now, I know we have the 5 C's, and I have the privilege of working with you and understanding that. What are the key points? How do I elicit the emotion? I would love for you to dive into that.
So there's 5 C's. Every story has a character. That character is put into context. Then there's conflict. Conflict doesn't have to be bad. It can be funny, right? Conflict. Then there's a climax, the aha moment, and then there's closure. So we always talk about a story has 5 C's. It also has 2 arcs. The business arc, so train leaves station A, gets to station B. Ryan tells a story from the stage because he's taking the audience from A to B. He's going to get them there and deliver them. Now, the more interesting question is, when they're looking out the window on that journey, what did they see? What did they feel? What did they experience? That's the up down. So left to right, west to east is the business arc. The emotional arc is north to south. And if you can imagine just a little squiggly line, an arc of a story, character, context, conflict, you imagine that line. If I could take it with my fingers and pinch it and go like this, now I can play with the emotions. And I know I've said this for the 19th time, but I want to be careful with your audience. I am not saying by toggling the emotional line that Ryan is changing the truth of the story. He's not fictionalizing. He's just emphasizing different elements of the story to make the journey more interesting. I'll end with this. We know that when Ryan or Bennie or Craig does that, you are 6 to 7 times as powerful in that moment as anything else you could say.
Well, Craig, I want to tie together 2 words that you said, in process and objection. Tell me a story about your biggest objection and the process you use to get beyond it.
Oh boy. So I did a deal with a big tech company that's been mentioned in this podcast already about 7 years ago. In the process of selling that deal, they kept using the word transformation over and over. We want to transform our people. And so what was interesting is when I went to propose the deal, based on my understanding of the word transformation and everything they had told me, and I triggered this huge objection. And so I did some things clearly wrong, which I always do. And they were horrified. They really wanted to do business with us. But they said, you are so far out of the ballpark. Again, there's a 5-step process for handling objections. And I led with the acknowledgement that I had made an error. And I said, look, it looks like I way overshot this. I was making some assumptions that now I'm understanding might have been wrong. That's on me. Tell me more about where you want to be. Just that first, what we call expert move, Ryan and Bennie did, is it took not all, but most of the steam out of, because they were shocked and like mad. They were like, are you out of your mind? Just took most of it out. If someone's ghosting you, apologize. If you've just triggered a huge objection, apologize. And sometimes salespeople are like, what do you mean apologize? It's not my fault. I don't care if it's not your fault. One of the best things we can do as human beings in relationships, personal or professional, is apologize.
Craig, this is incredible. And I know you have to run. So this is only part 1 of the conversation. We would love to have you back for a part 2 in terms of
I hope so.
Covering even more things in terms of leadership, what you did at the Crown and Pritzker Group in terms of the venture capital and being an operating partner. But we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for you coming on the Gridiron and Growth podcast. You're an incredible human.
I would love to go to part 2 if you folks are willing. And look, it has been a privilege to be with you and to learn with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Gridiron and Growth. Make sure to shoot us an email at gridirongrowthpod@gmail.com for some questions and sign up for the newsletter that can be found in the show notes. Big special thanks to Big Up Studios and Streamline Media for helping support Gridiron and Growth.